Welcome into it.
Just a show.
What's your name, buddy?
Cameron.
How old are you, Cameron?
4.
Thanks for being with us, buddy. We appreciate you. I'm your host, Jay Stone, and with me, as always, is Corey Champney.
Hey.
We're here in beautiful Cornelia, Georgia, recording at Habersham Broadcasting Company. We're here to bring you today, tomorrow, yesterday's sports. We talk about the Georgia Bulldogs, the Atlanta Braves, Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta Hawks. Soon to start bringing you footage on the Atlanta United Football Club. We also cover some New England sports, the Patriots, the Boston Red Sox, and the standalone Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Thanks for coming in and joining us today, folks. We're going to be talking about our top 10 greatest college football games of our time. Not of all time, of our time. Corey's going to start us out at number 10. What do you got for us, Corey?
Well, before we get to number 10, you all heard that sweet little voice to start the show, right? My wonderful 4-year-old son. I love him to death. But for all of you that have kids out there, and for some of you that have your fur babies, your fur kids out there, you can understand too. They drive you crazy. So the other day, I'm playing hide and go seek with my 2-year-old and my 4-year-old, and I'm looking everywhere for this kid. You know, my 2-year-old is stuck to my leg like a crazy person. So he and I are looking all over the house. Downstairs, we're looking in the living room, the kitchen, the half bath, the closets, the master bedroom, the master bath, my closet, his mom's closet. We're looking everywhere. Can't find this kid. So then I go upstairs. I look in the bathroom upstairs. I look in the bedrooms, the closets. And then I hear a little giggling coming from the halfway finished room above the garage.
Yeah.
I hear giggling. So I'm like, I bet he's in there. I open the door, and instead of being like shocked and surprised that I found him, he's giggling. And he's like, Dada, I peed. And I was like, you peed, but your pants aren't wet. He's like, no, I peed on the floor. And the floor's not finished. It's just that wood,
Subflooring.
And I look, and he said, and there is a line of 4-year-old urination coming from one part of the corner right next to the insulation down to almost to where the door is.
Goodness gracious.
And he is cackling like he thinks it's the funniest thing ever. And I said, why didn't you go to the bathroom? Well, then you would have found me. And I didn't want to be found. Dad, this is hide and seek. Come on now.
You know the rules.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, well, you told me about it. I can't get mad. You didn't try to hide it. So I had to, clean it up and everything. Everything was fine. I just thought it was hilarious. He was
Kid's
just
got
like,
commitment.
He's just like, you know what? You would have found me, and I would have lost. And I was like, yeah, you got a point.
That's my boy.
So, but that's my kids for you. They're a little bit too much like me sometimes. Anyways, number 10. Do you remember the 2012 SEC championship?
Do I ever?
The 11-1 Georgia Bulldogs and the 11-1 Alabama Crimson Tide?
Yeah,
What-
like it was
what-
yesterday.
What is a Crimson Tide, by the way? Do you know?
It's like a red wave. Like crimson's a shade of red, right?
A red wave. Is there such thing
I don't know.
called a red wave? I mean, their mascot's an elephant, a red elephant. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Wouldn't you be the red elephant?
According to Google, Crimson Tide is the nickname of the University of Alabama. It's said to have originated in 1907. According to the university, Hugh Doc Roberts, a sports editor for the Birmingham Age Herald, is credited with coming up with the term after watching Alabama play to a 6-6 tie with Auburn in muddy conditions. The phrase Crimson Tide was commonly used at those times to describe the blood or life, often in context of poetry and war. In this case, Roberts is said to have had described the Alabama team as looking like a crimson tide because the red mud from the field had stained their white jerseys of crimson. Like crimson.
Wow, that's
So a little over 100 years ago, some dude was
That's
talking about how muddy they were, and it stuck.
how bloody they were. And that's morbid.
Yeah, a little bit.
Huh.
The mud, the blood, and the ball.
I don't like this team.
I don't either.
I don't like Alabama not just for that reason, but that makes me not like them even more. Like Crimson Tide, you are an elephant. An elephant. Anyways, this game was coached by Nick Saban of the Alabama bloody white jersey shirt people. And the Georgia Bulldogs was coached by Mark Richt. This was like his second to last year. I think 15 was his last year, I believe. This was a crazy game. You remember this game?
Vividly.
This was a crazy, crazy game. And, I think the final score was 32-28.
Yep.
But this game was a back and forth. I think Georgia at one time had a 21-10 lead, and they just stomped back. But this Alabama team was stacked. It had, A.J. McCarron, of course, was the quarterback.
Eddie Lacy at running back.
Eddie Lacy and T.J. Yeldon at running back. They had Amari Cooper as one of the receivers on that team. Clinton Dix, was their free safety. Landon Collins was on that team. Kevin Norwood was their other wide receiver. They even had Kenyon Drake as a running back. C.J. Mosley was a linebacker. Nico Johnson was a linebacker. And D. Milner was one of the corners. This was a ridiculous team stacked on the side for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Go Dogs.
Aaron Murray was quarterback. Who was the running back?
Todd Gurley II.
That's right. Keith Marshall was his backup. Tavares King.
My classmate, shout out to Tavares, one of our future guests coming up. He had a pretty big game that night.
We'll probably talk to him about this game when he comes in. Malcolm Mitchell, former New England Patriot. Let's see, Alec Ogletree.
Yep.
I don't know why I couldn't say that name. Was a linebacker. Jarvis Jones, Bakari Rambo, Damian Swan, Sanders Cummings, and Jordan and John Jenkins. Also, Chris Conley was a wide receiver along with Marlon Brown. And this game was ridiculous. So the scoring, it starts out, first quarter, nothing. Second quarter, I believe Jay Rome, who was the tight end, he caught a 19-yard touchdown pass from Aaron Murray.
Mm-hmm.
Then Eddie Lacy runs 41 yards.
He gone.
And that dude was not quick. He was just a bulldozer. He just ran through people. That's tied at 7-7. And then with no time left in the second, a 22-yard field goal by Jeremy Shelley gave Bama a 10-7 lead at halftime. Todd Gurley in the third quarter, 3-yard run. And then this play is insane. If you ever watch this game, this play is crazy. It's the blocked field goal, and it was run in by Alec Ogletree for 55 yards. That gave Georgia a 21-10 lead. This play right here is one of the main highlights you'll see from this game. It's beautiful. It's blocked. Ogletree picked it up. He gone. He takes it right into the end zone. That's followed up in the third. A couple minutes later, T.J. Yeldon, 10-yard run, and they scored 2-point conversion, 21-18. Then we go into the fourth quarter. Eddie Lacy, once again, a 1-yard run, 25-21 Bama. Followed up a few minutes later by Todd Gurley with a 10-yard run, made it 28-25 UGA. This game's done, right? Georgia's going to win. Before 2021 came along, it was hard being a Bulldogs fan because of games like this.
It was hard being a fan of any team that had to play Alabama in that time frame.
Yes.
3 minutes and 55 seconds to go in the game.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 4 minutes, 4 minute, 1 second to go in the game. We're up. We're winning. We got this.
Oh, yeah.
And then we punt and give the ball to Alabama. What were we thinking?
Well, you weren't expecting A.J. McCarron to throw a 44-yard bomb to Amari Cooper. I don't even think it was a bomb. I just think it was a pass that Amari Cooper ran for 44 yards into the end zone, 32-28. But then Georgia gets the ball, right? And they're driving down, and I think think if I remember correctly, they made it to the 1 yard line.
That is correct.
And Aaron Murray throws a pass that's incomplete, and they lose the game.
No, that's the kicker.
Oh.
That's the thing. If Chris Conley drops that ball,
Yeah.
a shout out to Chris Conley.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
He was in a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. If he drops the ball, yeah.
If he drops that ball at the 3 yard line,
Yep.
there's still 3 seconds left
Still
to go.
3 seconds.
But he catches it at the 3 yard
And
or at
gets
the Alabama 5.
And gets tackled at the what?
He slides down,
Yeah.
and because it's college, you're down automatically when you catch the ball. But he caught it in bounds, and we had no timeouts.
Yep.
But he caught it with like 4 seconds to go. So the fans just watch this guy selfishly catch the football on the 5 yard line and lay there as the game ends, because you can't spot the ball in 5 seconds and call another play.
And is this when they did away with the rule where if it's a first down, the clock automatically stops?
I think so. I think this was the end of an era.
Or maybe it wasn't even a first down yet.
Well, what kills me is here's the drive. We're going to do it. This is the first time Georgia's going to climb that Alabama mountain.
And if
There's
they
a
win,
minute 2 to go.
if they win this game, this saves Mark Richt's job.
Absolutely. The drive starts on Georgia's 24. There's a minute 2 to go. This is supposed to be the Georgia drive of the new dynasty. Aaron Murray drops back, completes a pass to Arthur Lynch for 9 yards. 2nd and 1, Aaron Murray's pass incomplete. 3rd and 1, Todd Gurley, 4 yard gain. First down now, 45 seconds to go. Aaron Murray throws an incomplete pass to Chris Conley. 2nd down, 38 seconds to go. Aaron Murray completes another 15-yard pass to Arthur Lynch. Then we got another first down, 30 seconds left in the game. Murray, 23-yard pass to Tavares King, out of bounds for a first down. So 15 seconds to go. Aaron Murray gets a complete pass to Arthur Lynch down to the 8 yard line. We're on the 8 yard line.
And
it's 1st and goal with 5 seconds to go.
And this is the pass where Aaron Murray, he passed in the end zone. It was deflected by C.J. Mosley. And
Yep.
it was intended for Chris Conley, but it was he was kind of surprised to see the next play, he was surprised to see the ball.
Yep.
Or that's what he said. And when he caught the ball, he caught at the 5 and just
It was around the shoelaces pass. It was low pass, so he went down to get it, but he's already down by the time he catches the ball, and the game's over.
They said that he wasn't the intended receiver in the play, and that he caught the pass, he fell down inbounds at the 5 yard line, and the clock ran out.
And that was the end of the Mark Richt era, really.
So
that 4-point loss, I mean, that was devastating. I was in Atlanta that night. I was there for that game. In the city, rather. I'm not in the stadium. My friends and I were going to see Kevin Hart live at the Fox Theater, and it was an incredible show. Shout out to Kevin Hart.
I hear that
ago.
if you sit in the back row, you can't even see the guy.
We were in the nosebleeds, and when he was on certain parts of the stage, he'd disappear. If he got behind a small speaker or something.
That's why he's friends with The Rock. He stands behind The Rock. You can't even see him.
But, yeah, devastating loss. Devastating 4-point loss to the Alabama Crimson Tide in 2011. Incredible season the Dogs had that year, 11-2.
I mean, it really was. It was by far Mark Richt's best team. It was his best recruited team, and he was always a really good recruiter. But he'd bring in these players that always got in trouble. Like they were the top players, but they always got in trouble for some reason or another. And
it's a trend in Athens, unfortunately.
And I think he was a little bit too nice of a guy. He was just like, whatever.
Mark Richt's a good, God-fearing man, and he had his hands full there in Athens.
So this game took place December 1st, 2012. The attendance, you want to know what the attendance was? The attendance was 75,624 individuals. They packed the old Georgia Dome to see this game.
Yep.
A.J. McCarron was 13 of 21 for 162 yards with 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Aaron Murray was 18 of 33 for 265 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The MVP of the game, Eddie Lacy, 20 attempts for 181 yards, 2 touchdowns. His counterpart, his teammate, T.J. Yeldon, 25 attempts, 153 yards and a touchdown. They ran all over this Georgia defense. Amari Cooper, 8 catches for 128 yards and a touchdown. Todd Gurley man, 23 attempts, 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the lone reception was Jay Rome. He had 1 catch, 19 yards, 1 touchdown. But Tavares King, 5 catches for 142 yards.
Big game.
With his average of 28.4 yards per catch.
Sounds like high school right there. TK was always a big playmaker.
The top tackler for the Alabama red shirt bloody people, or red and white shirt bloodied whatever people, confusing, red elephant, yeah. C.J. Mosley with 7 tackles. And Clinton Dix had an interception in this game. And Xavier Dixon had 2 sacks. Alec Ogletree had 11 tackles. He was the main leading tackler for the Georgia Bulldogs with the 1 touchdown on a blocked field goal. Bakari Rambo had 8 tackles. Jarvis Jones had 6 tackles and 2 sacks. And John Jenkins had 6 tackles and a sack.
And just for reference, so everybody kind of remembers the time frame, this year Alabama lost 1 game, the whole season, at home to Johnny Football Manziel.
And they went on to face Notre Dame in the championship.
And dismantled them.
And they won that game 42-14.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It was a shellacking.
And Eddie Lacy had a game in that game too. He scored. He had 140 rushing yards with a touchdown, and he caught a pass for a touchdown.
I'm not a Fighting Irish fan, but for that national championship, I bought a hat at Lids just to support the Irish, and they came out, and I had to hear it from every Rolling Tide or whatever they're called fan in the room.
Roll Tide. That was the Manti Te'o fake girlfriend thing when that came up.
I remember that.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Manti Te'o was all-world elite linebacker, right?
Yep.
He was a beast in college. He had a pretty decent little NFL career with the Chargers, but he was a beast in college. Mm-hmm. And he had this online girlfriend that he thought was an online girlfriend, found out he was getting catfished, and she died. And they made this big deal about Manti Te'o playing this game for a girlfriend that he thought died. It wasn't a girlfriend that died. It was a dude that was talking to him online, and it was he never knew. He thought it was a chick.
Yep.
And
he got played.
He got catfished big time. And when this came out, it was embarrassing for him, and I don't really think he ever played the same again.
I don't either.
He was the butt of everybody's joke, and it came out right around the time of this national championship game.
Yep, and it was in his head. It really messed him up, and it was probably an Alabama student doing it to him, or a classmate. You never know.
I think it was someone out in California, I believe, but because it all came out and everything. It was a sad situation, but that was this season. That was that Notre Dame team, and he just did not play well in that game either.
Yeah, a lot going on in college football drama in 2011, 12, 13.
I would say that this was the last chance for Mark Richt.
I agree.
He was politely shown the door, I believe, in 2015 or 14. But I say that he did do a lot of great things for Georgia. He came and kind of turned the program around. Unfortunately for him, he went to Miami after he went to Georgia, and then I think he got sick. Didn't he get cancer? And he had to step away. But they've gone since then. Kirby Smart's kind of invited him to be on the sidelines and stuff like that. He recognizes everything that, and a lot of people will crap on Mark Richt. He did a lot of great things when he was there, but he also did a lot of things that a lot of people got aggravated with.
Yeah, Mark Richt got diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2021.
So 2015 was his last season. They fired him right before the bowl game, and that was a 10-3 team. And they just got tired of the inconsistencies that were involved with it.
Many bowl-winning teams did Mark Richt produce. I was looking over when we were coming up with content for this episode. I was looking at how many bowl games he had made it to, and there were over a dozen, and we won 75% of them.
Many top 5 recruiting classes too.
Absolutely.
Most of them underachieved.
Yep.
And look at how he did not have a great record against Florida either. Man, Florida spanked him. But I digress. Let's go to game number 9, and this is another.
Game number 9. I'm going to take the helm on this one. This would be a another UGA Bama heartbreaker.
Oh,
But absolutely, if you look at it from an unbiased standpoint, one of the greatest college football championship games ever played. Scoreless first quarter. UGA puts up 13-0 going into the half. Bama comes out of the half, puts 10 points on the board, and shuts out UGA in the fourth quarter to take it to overtime. UGA gets the ball first, can't move it. Alabama's fired up. And, Tua Tagovailoa drops back, gets sacked, makes it, 3rd and 18?
yeah.
3rd and 26, something ridiculous. And then for whatever reason, we left the Heisman Trophy winner, 101, on the outside in overtime where there is zero forgiveness. And all Tua did was throw it as hard as he possibly could in exactly the right spot. And that's ball game. And not to mention, this is one of the greatest coaching calls at halftime ever. You took a Heisman candidate out and benched him at halftime and put a freshman in no one's ever heard of, much less be able to pronounce his last name. And he leads you out to 26 points in the second half, including overtime. Are you kidding me? Nick Saban, even if this goes wrong and Georgia wins this game, even if Georgia somehow miraculously wins in overtime, Nick Saban still goes down as one of the boldest coaches to bench a Heisman candidate that got them to this point at halftime in the big game. You wrote it all season, finished strong. No, not Nick Saban. He knew what he had in the stable. He throws Tua out there, and Tua throws it into the end zone.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the biggest heartbreaks as far as being a Dog fan for me, I was in Arizona, living with some friends, far away from any other of the Dog fans, far away from my family. Two of my roommates, neither one of them care for football, much less college football. We got a hockey fan and a basketball fan in the house there. Alabama starts making a comeback, and I start, expressing to them my experiences over the years of how Bama always finds a way to squeeze it out in the end and beat us. And unless we're winning by 50, I'm never comfortable until the clock runs out. So going into overtime, I was like, guys, we're going to get the ball first, and if we don't score, we're going to lose this game. And then when that happened, they both were like, hey, man, that you're wrong. Don't worry about it. Your defense been playing great all game. And I'm like, no, they haven't. They played great in the first half when they shut out Jalen Hurts, who they were thoroughly prepared for. So we prepared for an RPO mobile quarterback, and then you brought out a thoroughbred, pure passing quarterback, pocket passer in Tua Tagovailoa, and he absolutely lit us up. We weren't ready. I don't know why we didn't have an in-game adjustment in the third quarter that made a difference, but I can tell you right now, when I was standing on the couch and when he got sacked and got dropped back all the way near midfield, my roommates were trying to get excited with me. I was like, we can't get excited.
Yeah.
It's not over.
You can't do it.
The Heisman Trophy winners on that team.
Yep.
They don't just hand trophies out, the Heisman out like candy. It's not a Halloween thing. You have to be the absolute best.
Yep.
Throughout the entire season. You can't miss a game or two.
No.
Nobody wins a Heisman by missing a couple games. And this guy put in the work, and it's showing in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And Devonta Smith just absolutely streaking down the sidelines. You couldn't have overthrown him. As long as you put that ball in play, he's going to get under it. And he did. And it was, it's the nightmare that replayed in my head for a few years, at least until 2021.
And this is coming off of a great game against Oklahoma, which I have a feeling we'll talk about later. But
of course,
I remember this game. I was I was stuck on night shift at the time. But I remember this game, and I remember that it was the back and forth and excited. When Blankenship hit that 51-yard field goal, I was like, oh, there's a chance. There's a chance. But Devontae Smith, 41-yard bomb to Devontae Smith in overtime, making it 26-23. It breaks
After
my
a
heart.
16-yard sack.
And you have to remember, too, that this was a team that was Georgia the SEC champion or was Alabama?
We were.
Okay, so Georgia won the SEC championship. Bama didn't. And, yeah, that's right. They beat Auburn.
Yep.
They beat Auburn 28-7. But then you come off that game against Oklahoma that's high scoring in the playoff, the semifinal game. But what amazed me was Georgia came out. They were so hungry. They were ready to win. You had Nick Saban's former defensive coordinator, former main recruiter, and Kirby Smart coaching this team. This is Kirby's first national championship game as a head coach. He's fired up. The team's fired up. And it shows that they matched up very well against Alabama. But like you said, the danglers on Nick Saban to pull out Jalen Hurts and put in Tua Tagovailoa. I can't even say his name.
Tua Tagovailoa.
Tagovailoa. Yes. They put in the Flying Hawaiian. Is he Hawaiian?
Yes.
The Flying Hawaiian, and he starts slinging it. He's slinging it like he's Brett Favre out there. And this guy, and let's not get it mixed up. This guy can run too.
Oh, absolutely. There's a big run that he breaks off as soon as he gets in the game.
He can tuck it and run. But when this guy came in, everybody was like, "Who's this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Who is this guy? Tua, huh?" What?
I mean, even the announcers referred to him as Tua the whole game because that's difficult to throw out Tagovailoa in a sentence.
You speaking that Hawaiian, I mean, that's difficult.
And Tua even throws an interception.
Yeah.
And Nick stays with him.
Yeah.
Because on the very next play after Tua throws an interception, Fromm throws an interception.
Yep. And let's not get it twisted. Jake Fromm ended up breaking records at Georgia. He broke all of Aaron Murray's records.
Very decorated there at UGA.
And this was going to be his legacy, but turned out not so much. And these two teams are stacked. You're talking about Jalen Hurts. You're talking about Tua Tagovailoa. God, at that time. You're talking about
Najee Harris, Sony Michel,
Devontae Smith,
Riley Ridley.
Yep.
The players on the field here
Calvin
in this
Ridley's
game,
little brother.
Nick Chubb, 18 carries for 25 yards.
Yeah.
They shut Chubb down. Shout out Nick Chubb, my favorite running back of all time.
They had Chubb. They had Sony Michel.
They had DeAndre Swift.
Had DeAndre Swift. That was their three-headed monster. Remember we talked about in 2012, Alabama had the three-headed monster?
Yep.
They had the three-headed monster in running backs. And you had Jake Fromm, who was a very accurate quarterback, who could sling it.
Yep.
And he could sling it. And Riley Ridley was no slouch. He's the younger brother of Calvin Ridley. And that team was a stacked team. This was the prelude to that team in 2021 that was so awesome.
Yep.
That was the number one defensive team in all of college football ever.
I mean, there's some Super Bowl champions on the field here. We got
Devontae
Miko
Smith.
Hardman.
Yep.
Devontae hadn't won one yet.
Oh, I was going to say Jalen Hurts, but he hasn't won one yet either. They both play on the same team.
They've made it to one.
Which is crazy, yeah. But they lost to Miko Hardman in the Kansas City Chiefs.
Josh Jacobs was returning kicks.
That's crazy.
For Alabama.
There's a NFL player.
Trayvon Diggs, Alabama.
It's ridiculous.
The field was absolutely covered in talent. Miko Hardman, DeAndre Baker, DeAndre Swift, Javon Wims, Terry Godwin, Miko Hardman, Riley Ridley.
The SEC is the minor leagues of the NFL.
Oh yeah, even Bo Scarborough was in this game.
I know, Bo Scarborough. It's crazy.
Alabama had a three-headed monster: Josh Jacobs, Damian Harris, and Bo Scarborough.
And Damian Harris, Patriot. But in Bo
and Najee Harris.
Yeah, and Najee Harris.
Steelers.
It's crazy. That is ridiculous.
The talent on the field for this game, incredible.
But the Philadelphia Eagles have a lot of Bulldog players.
That's right,
And
go Dogs.
But they also have Jalen Hurts. They also have Devontae Smith. And they also have DeAndre Swift now on their team. This is ridiculous. Like, half these players on these teams play for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's crazy. I think this game, though, it will go down as an all-timer. It will go down as probably Nick Saban's best coach game, one of his best coach games of all time.
Has to be.
For the foresight, I mean, he pulled a Belichick. That's a Belichick-type move. I'm going to pull a quarterback out mid-game because I know that they're prepared for an RPO quarterback. I know the guy across from me on the other sideline. I know how meticulous he is about preparing for quarterback.
Yep.
They'll never expect me to take Jalen Hurts out. Let me take him out. And they put in Tua. And then the next year, don't they flip it? They take Tua out and put Jalen Hurts in?
Yep, they do. Let me tell you a fun fact about this game. This is my most hated stat about the entire game. Devontae Smith shut him down for 4 quarters and 2 plays in overtime. He caught 1 pass for 41 yards and a touchdown, and that whole game was the game winner. That's the only pass we let him catch.
But isn't that how greatness is defined? Let me tell you a little story. This has nothing to do with football. This is another baseball story. I was deathly sick, but my team was playing in a Little League playoff game. I didn't want to miss it. I was sick as a dog. I didn't know what I had at the time, but I was the only catcher on the team, and they needed me. Well, at this point, I had 6th grade, just moved up here to Northeast Georgia. You know, I thought all the people around here talk funny because they said y'all and ain't got no and stuff like that. But so I'm there, and I just remember the guys from this, we're down by 2. And there is a guy on third base, and, he's stumbling and around like he's going to steal. And I just remember the pitcher, the ball, I could see the ball clearly coming out of his hand. And I had struck out my first 3 at-bats, but I remember seeing the ball come out of his hand just perfect. And that ball looked like a beach ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I put all my weight on my back leg, and I crushed it. The first home run I ever hit. Tied the game, right? I come up again the next at-bat. We're still tied. Same thing. Different pitcher. And he comes out, and I just see the ball for whatever. Maybe it's because I was sick and on cold medicine. I could focus in.
Yeah, no doubt.
But the ball looked like a beach ball. I laid back and crushed it. Another home run. I'm running around the bases, and I get to home plate, and I'm like, I'm out of breath. The coach, everybody's jumping and everything, and I'm just like, I got to go sit down. Go to the doctor the next day. It turns out I had pneumonia.
Jesus.
I hit my first 2 home runs of my life
with
pneumonia. But I had struck out the first 3 times.
And you were actually on steroids. Doctor prescribed steroids.
Yeah, I was. Because they misdiagnosed me with something. They put me on steroids. And I was taking like cold medicine like it was, grape soda. And like I remember I was on I was going over to my mom and just like taking the little cap, pouring it in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got to go out there again. I'm a catcher, so I have all this gear on. I'm probably running a fever. I don't know. I probably am. But I jacked 2 home runs.
Right.
This is my Michael Jordan flu game, my Joe Montana, like chicken soup game. But in my defense, I didn't know I had pneumonia. I just thought I had a really, really bad, like, chest cold.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out, no, I had fluid in my lungs.
Mercy sakes.
The whole time. But the fact is, I'm not great. I never went to go play Major League Baseball or anything like that. But the thing was, I was a team captain. I was the only catcher we had on the team. I had to step up. And if I didn't step up, and I was like, if I go down for what I thought was a little cold at the time, that's going to send the wrong message to my team. I had to play. This was a playoff game. We had to win. And to hunker down and to focus in and just see that ball come out like a freaking beach ball out of the guy's hand and crush it. That was Devontae Smith. He focused in and caught that pass. Yep. It was the one pass, but it was the one that mattered. It was the only one that mattered.
And he was open for 6 yards in every direction.
Yeah.
Like he beat the corner, the safeties over the top, like already breaking down in the end zone, slowing down.
Georgia was doing the which way did he go? Which way did he go?
He burned him.
Yep. You ready for number 8?
Number 8, what you got?
I got the 2011 BCS National Championship game. Do you remember this game?
A little bit.
the reason why this is on the list, number one, it is a great game. It's not a high-scoring game. It was 22-19, but I remember this game because this is a game that, for me, I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing when this game happened. So this game takes place January 10th, 2011. Just so to put it in perspective, I got married on May 7th, 2011. So
Okay.
I remember where I was. I was in my in-laws' house, and I was keeping track of this game because it's the national championship game. But I was watching it on my phone. And yes, we could still do that in 2011. It wasn't the Stone Ages yet. I was watching it on my phone, and it was this Auburn team had a pretty popular quarterback in the name of Cam Newton. And to me, I didn't like Cam Newton when he was Tim Tebow's backup at Florida. But for whatever reason, this Auburn team was so fun to watch. And it was mainly because Cam Newton, you hadn't seen a player like this and played this type of exciting football since Michael Vick. And I always remember there are games where you always remember where you were and why it stands out. I don't know why this game always stands out to me, but it does. And the fact that they were playing a team from the Pac-10, the Oregon Ducks were coming in. They were 12-0 coming into this. And the Auburn Tigers were 13-0. Gene Chizik is the head coach of the Auburn Tigers. And Chip Kelly, the famous Chip Kelly, is the head coach of the Oregon Ducks. This was another game that was kind of back and forth. It started out with a field goal. Oregon took an early 3-0 lead. And then Cody Burns had a 35-yard catch from Cam Newton, made it 7-3. LaMichael James, he was
His only touchdown of the game, by the way.
Yes.
I mean, his only catch of the game.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes. LaMichael James was the running back for the Oregon Ducks. But he caught a pass here from quarterback Darren Thomas. And see, in my mind, for some reason, I had Marcus Mariota. Turns out no as the quarterback. And so that's a 11-7 game. So I guess they got a 2-point conversion on that. They had to. Oh, no, wait a minute. Yeah, that's right. And then LaMichael James got tackled in the end zone for a safety, making it 11-9 Auburn.
Yeah, Rob Beard rushed in for the 2-point conversion to make it 11-7.
Yeah, and then Emory Blake, a 30-yard touchdown catch from Cam Newton. He was slinging it. 16-11 Auburn, and Auburn had a 28-yard field goal by Wes Byram. Then LaMichael James kind of trying to make up for that. With 2 minutes and 33 seconds left in the fourth quarter, LaMichael James a 2-yard catch from Darren Thomas. They got the 2-point conversion. It's tied at 19, and then Cam Newton took over and drove them down the field. And I was watching the highlights of this the other night, and just Cam Newton just laser focused. They're driving down the field, doing their 2-minute drill. With no time left, they get a 19-yard field goal from Wes Byram, and the Auburn Tigers are the national champions. Some players to know on these teams. Cam Newton was 20 of 34 for 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT. He also ran 22 times for 64 yards. Michael Dyer, who went and played in the NFL, 22 rushes for 143 yards. Emory Blake had 4 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown. Devin Adams, 4 receptions, 54 yards. And this is a story right here. Their tight end, Philip Luchin Kitchen, had 2 catches for 48 yards, but he died a couple years, about a year or two after this. Right after he got drafted, I believe he was drafted by the Colts. And one night at 3 o'clock in the morning, because nothing good ever happens after midnight,
Right.
he's riding in a car as a passenger, and they get into an accident. And him and another guy, I think he was a college baseball player, they died on scene. But he was a top-ranked tight end. He had 2 catches in this game for 48 yards. Cody Burns had 1 catch for 35 yards and a touchdown, like we said. Nico Thorpe was on this team. Josh Bynes was on this team. Nick Fairley was on this team. So pretty stacked Auburn team. Oregon had Darren Thomas, who was 27 of 40 for 363 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. LaMichael James, 13 attempts for 49 yards, but he had 4 catches for 39 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kenjon Barner was also played in the NFL, 11 catches, 32 yards, and another 2 catches for 8 yards. And Jeff Molly was their leading receiver with 9 catches for 133 yards. Some other players on this team, Josh Barrett, Deion Jordan, and Casey Matthews. They had Cam Newton, and you know what? This was the only year he was the quarterback for them. He transferred from Florida. You know, he sat behind Tim Tebow. He learned a thing or two, but Florida didn't realize what they had in Cam Newton because the guy in college was a beast. And he was a beast for a few years with Carolina, for a while with Carolina.
Absolutely.
And strong
Took him to a Super Bowl.
And strong arm, could run the ball, was a generational talent,
Absolutely.
in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the guy because he played with the Panthers, and he always, hurt the Falcons. Always found a way to hurt the Falcons.
Yep.
And he didn't do well with New England when he went to go play with the Patriots. So I was kind of like, we got. This was the Cam Newton that was ordered on Wish, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
We got the Wish version of Cam Newton, but
Not fair.
But this game it's an exciting game to watch if you watch it from the third quarter on. It's kind of boring at the first half, but the reason why it's on this list is because, for me, it's such a standout game, and it's the game that Cam Newton was already on the map, but this put him on the map. This was his breakout game. This was his show, and he won. He won a natty.
Yes, he did. So, if I may, roll into number 7. And by the way, for any of you that don't know, Corey and I are in our 30s. So, our wheelhouse is the early 2000s to now on pro sports, because that's when we actually became real fans and not just staring at the TV with our mouth open trying to figure out what was going on, breathing everybody else's air. So, if you know anything about college football in that era, you know that Alabama was almost always competing for a national championship. They almost always had only 1 or 2 losses or none on the season. So Bama makes this list several times. And it's not because we're fans. It's just because they were in these games. And number 7 is no different, except Alabama. Well, not except. Alabama does come out on top once again. Number 2, Alabama Crimson Tide versus the number 1 Clemson Tigers in the 2016-17 National Championship. This is Jake Coker versus Deshaun Watson in a 45-40 game as a final score. Big fourth quarter, huge shootout. Alabama comes storming back at the end, but there's no scrubs in this game. Leading passer and leading rusher for the Clemson Tigers was Deshaun Watson. He had 405 yards through the air and 4 passing touchdowns.
Goodness.
Still couldn't bring it home, though. Clemson's defense was not stout enough to stop Alabama. So if we just look at a little stats here and some of the players on this team, you had Jake Coker for Alabama, who I didn't go to the pros that I know of, never even heard of the guy, forgot he was the quarterback in this game. Matter of fact, he was 16 for 25 for 335 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, no picks. The Tennessee Titans GOAT, Derrick Henry, at running back with 36 bone-stifling carries, 158 yards rushing, and 3 rushing touchdowns. O.J. Howard was the leading receiver for Alabama. No scrub there.
No.
Some of the other players on the Alabama team that year were Derrick Henry, Kenyon Drake.
Wow.
O.J. Howard, Calvin Ridley. And J.K. Scott was the punter. No big deal there. Shout out, J.K. I do have to say I don't really see a lot of big names on this Clemson team other than maybe some skill players like Ray McLeod.
Was Hunter Renfrow on that
Hunter
team?
Renfrow had 7 catches for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a 31-yard reception, was his long for the game. I feel like I'm going to butcher this name. I can't get a pronunciation out of ESPN here, but Sharon Peak, Sharon Peak,
Yeah, we'll go-
Sharon Peak. That's the Clemson leading receiver for the game. Leading rushers for Clemson in that game were Deshaun Watson with 20 carries, 73 yards. He had a 20-yard was his longest rush. Wayne Gallman, 14 carries, 45 yards, 1 touchdown. He had a long of 34. And nothing impressive past that as far as personnel. However, if we run down the recap of the game and just the play-by-play, you've got a 14-7 after the first quarter. In the second quarter, Alabama puts some more points on the board and ties it going into the half. So we got a 14-14 halftime score. Coming out in the third quarter, Alabama puts up a touchdown. Clemson tacks on a touchdown and a field goal. So we're looking at third quarter, Clemson scores. It's 24-21 Clemson. This is when it gets crazy. With 3:38 to go in the game, in the third quarter, it's 24-21. And then both sides just forgot how to play defense after 4 consecutive punts. Alabama kicks a field goal, ties it at 24 apiece. Alabama, 2-play touchdown. They go 50 yards in less than a minute to go up 31-34. And then in a minute and 58 seconds, Clemson scores. Now it's 31-27, and that's a field goal. Alabama scores again, make it 38-27. So they started putting some distance in. Then here comes Clemson roaring back, and Deshaun Watson throws a 15-yard touchdown and gets stumped on the 2-point conversion. So it looks like Alabama's going to pretty much take this one home handedly as they score again, make it 45-33. But with less than a minute to go, Deshaun Watson passes to Jordan Leggett for a 24-yard touchdown, and they kick the extra point to make it 45-40. But they had no timeouts left, and the onside kick was recovered by Alabama, and all they had to do was take a knee, and the game was over. So Alabama comes out on top 45-40 in this one. Alabama dominated in certain areas of the game, but it was some mistakes they made that kept Clemson in it. Deshaun Watson played out of his mind in this game.
This was the same thing that I said about Cam Newton, you say about Deshaun Watson. Everybody already knew he was a great player, but this was his coming out game. Like,
yep.
Everybody thought differently about Cam Newton. And see, the Alabama-Clemson, this was their, second time facing each other?
I do believe so.
I think Alabama beat them, and then they won, and then I think Alabama beat them again with Trevor Lawrence, right?
I think Trevor Lawrence is the one that mopped the floor with Alabama.
Oh, that's what it was. So
loss.
I think they're 2-1 against Clemson all time, or Clemson's 2-1 against Alabama all time. But Deshaun Watson, this was his breakout come out game. Like, you didn't score 45 points against Alabama at this time. Like, they did not give up that many points with that defense that they had. They would score that many points on you, but you did not get that many points off Alabama at this time.
Right.
So Deshaun Watson was doing something that never been heard of. And then he goes to the NFL, and apparently he likes massages a lot.
Yeah, that's a sensitive subject. However, I will talk about Trevor Lawrence for just a second because he did some pretty amazing things. He played Joe Burrow in that 2019 national championship game, lost, but Joe Burrow was not going to be turned away that season. He was him. However, national championship for the 2018 season, Clemson versus Alabama, Trevor Lawrence
smoked him
44-16 with 347 yards passing.
So you're saying
smoked them
in 2 years they scored like 90 points against Alabama? That is insane.
Yeah,
that is crazy.
Nobody scores 90 points against Alabama.
No, and we looked up. You looked up the stat the other day against Georgia played TCU twice and scored almost 98 points against them or something.
It was like
that.
96-9.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and that is TCU going up against Georgia. That's not close. This is Clemson, who dominated the ACC, which is insane, much because the ACC was very weak at this point. But then they go in and they play Alabama. In this game, it's a back and forth. It's a very close game. Then they play them again either next year or a couple years later, and smoke them with Trevor Lawrence. And, Trevor Lawrence, yes, he had a bad couple years in the NFL. He kind of turned it around a little bit last year. And Deshaun Watson had 4 or 5, 6 good years in the NFL, and then all that stuff came out about him, and he's stealing Cleveland's money right now.
And there ain't no doubt about that.
Yeah, he's taking them for everything they're worth.
In the last 8 years, the Georgia Bulldogs have played TCU twice, and we have outscored them 96-30.
That's ridiculous.
It's just unfair.
That is ridiculous. But yeah, I could say that these two teams both were stacked. Both had a lot of players, a lot of guys that went on to the NFL.
And it was fun to watch.
Oh yeah. This was a very fun game to watch. I remember this game. I do, because everybody's rooting for Clemson, and when Clemson won, all was right in the world again.
Yep.
Because the almighty Alabama had fallen.
But not this year.
No. But it's always good to see Alabama lose. And, I guess I'm a Patriots fan, so this is kind of like the other end of being a Patriots fan. Everybody always wanted to see the Patriots lose, and I always wanted to see them win. So I kind of understand where Alabama's coming from. But
yeah, I bet
you know what?
do.
All dynasties have to come to an end. They all have to come to an end. And that's what we saw with this game. Moving on to number 6.
That's right.
Do you like Tostitos?
Yes.
So the 2003 Tostitos Fiesta Bowl, the BCS National Championship game, the 13-0 Ohio State Buckeyes taking on the 12-0 Miami Hurricanes, the U. Ohio State is coached by Senator Jim Tressel, and the U is coached by Larry Coker. This is a famous game. There's a lot going on in this game. Number one, it's a double overtime game. Number two, there's a controversy in this game, a controversial call. Number three, a star player on this team unalived his knee in this game.
Mm-hmm.
He tore all 3 ligaments in his knee in the fourth quarter. We'll get to it. The MVP of this game, there's 2. Craig Krenzel, the quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and Mike Doss, the safety for the Ohio State Buckeyes. So the first quarter starts out with Roscoe Parrish catching a 25-yard pass from Ken Dorsey, putting the Miami Hurricanes up 7-0. Craig Krenzel runs for 1 yard and ties it up at 7. Maurice Claret, remember him?
Oh, yes.
Star player. They did a 30 for 30 on him and how his career just deteriorated, just like his knee. He had a 7-yard run, 14-7. The Ohio State Buckeyes. Mike Nugent hits a 44-yard field goal, 17-7. Willis McGahee, a 9-yard run, making it 17-14. And then Severs, Miami kicker, 40-yard field goal in the fourth quarter with no time left, tied at 17. Then in overtime, Kellen Winslow Jr. catches a 17-yard pass from Dorsey because he's a machine. I'm a machine. And then Craig Krenzel runs for 1 yard. We go to a second overtime. And that's where Maurice Claret scores a 5-yard run. Now, the controversy. This was a play that took place in the first overtime.
So this is the wild fourth down play?
Yes, this is the wild fourth down play that took place. It was a pass interference penalty called against Miami in the first overtime period, and it faced immediate scrutiny. It's called pass interference, but it shouldn't have been. So the Glenn Sharp jammed Chris Gamble, who was the receiver for Ohio State. Yeah, for Ohio State at the line of scrimmage. Okay, that was legal at the
time. For Miami.
Yes. As he ran a fade route attempting to escape, Gamble broke off his route while Sharp maintained contact. And then at the top of the route, like when they're coming, when he's coming to the top of his route to where he's about to catch the ball, both Gamble and Sharp jumped for the ball, and it hit off his hands. Like I was watching this. It hit off of Gamble's hands, And the angle that they used to shoot it, replay it showed on his jump for the ball at the end of the play. The line judge, he said incomplete. Nope, incomplete. But they had a delay for a long time. Like they started the refs met, they talked about it. The field judge, he threw a penalty flag, and at first Miami thought they won the game. They stormed the field. Hey, yeah, we won. Slap hands. But nope. Turns out Porter revised it and said it was pass interference. And so they were on the field celebrating when the call was announced. They all had to come back, and that led to a score and led to the second overtime.
Mm-hmm.
And in the fourth quarter, Willis McGahee, a star running back for Miami, would go on to play in the NFL for many years. On a run, he unalives his knee. He goes to make a cut, and when he does, he falls to the ground. He tore all 3 ligaments in his knee, the ACL, the MCL, and the PCL, I believe. All the CLs, he tore them. I mean, he ripped them apart. And
he was a Heisman Trophy finalist.
Yes, and they thought his NFL career was done, was gonzo after that. But no, he still got drafted, played in Buffalo, played for a couple other teams, had a pretty good career. But this game had so much going on. You had action back and forth. You had literally two undefeated teams playing each other.
Yep. You
had the 2 best teams in college football. You had 2 of the most decorated teams in college football at the time, Miami and Ohio State.
Miami was on a 34-game winning streak.
They were bringing that Miami dynasty kind of back to the U.
They were in the thick of it.
Maurice Clarett of the Ohio State was an amazing running back. He would have been a first-round pick, but he had a lot of off-the-field issues. Ken Dorsey was he was very good at holding a clipboard in the NFL. That's all he really did. But these teams are pretty stacked. Let me go and read off some of these. So Ken Dorsey was 28 of 43 for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Craig Krenzel threw 21 passes, only completed 7 of them for 122 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. McGahee had 20 attempts for 67 yards and a touchdown. His backup was Walter Payton's son, Jared Payton. He had 8 runs for 17 yards. Their leading receiver, Miami's, was Kellen Winslow. He had 11 receptions for 122 yards, 1 touchdown. Roscoe Parrish, 5 receptions, 70 yards, and a touchdown. And great Andre Johnson, 4 catches, 54 yards. On the Ohio State side, Maurice Clarett had 23 runs for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns. Krenzel had 19 attempts for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading receiver was a former Falcon, Michael Jenkins, 4 catches, 45 yards. And Chris Gamble, who was the receiver on that said play, 2 receptions for 69 yards. Now, Gamble also played defense. They had Sean Taylor on this team. He had 2 interceptions in this game. Mike Doss and Dustin Fox had interceptions for the Ohio State team. That's crazy. That's Sean Taylor. Jonathan Vilma was on this team for them. This was a stacked team, but I will always remember this game because up until this point, this was the best national championship game up until this point. And watching these 2 teams go back and forth, it was crazy. I remember in my room, because I was like a junior in high school. I know I'm old, but I was a junior in high school when this game was going on, and I just remember being in my room and just like, man, this game is crazy. It is insane. And to this day, I always remember this game, and I will always remember Willis McGahee blowing his knee out. I feel your pain, brother. I feel your pain. But you went on to have a great career in the NFL, and it didn't look like he lost a step either when he went to the NFL. So
Some of those greats don't.
That was good news, but I hated it for him.
I remember the last play of this game very vividly. Now, Ohio State sends Grant on a blitz off the right edge, and he just grabs Dorsey and slings him as Dorsey just throws the ball towards the goal line and nothing happens. And there's that like 5-second pause of like, there's no flag.
Yep.
There's no call. That's it. We did it.
Well, that was because of the call earlier. You know, Miami had already stormed the field, and it was like, nope, go back.
Yep.
You're not done.
We're not done.
We're not done.
And Ohio State capitalizes. And pretty incredible.
All right, what do you got for number 5?
Okay. I did a last-minute change for number 5 because I'm a homer. So number 5 is what I would say was the national championship that year, but the sports world and as a whole disagrees with me. The Tostitos Fiesta Bowl in 2007, Boise State versus Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
That is one of the most iconic sporting events of all time. You have the proverbial underdog in Boise State, undersized, under-recruited, versus the perennial juggernaut in Oklahoma, fast-paced, big names, first-round draft picks. AP, number 1. So, like, you've got a Hall of Famer in the backfield, a future Hall of Famer in the backfield in that game, and you let that little shrimp school come in and punch you right in the mouth for 4 quarters and took you to overtime twice and then beat you on trick plays.
Yes.
Like that, if you could have written a script for a small school to rise in ascension to the top and take it out.
This was a movie. Yeah.
This is I don't know why they haven't made a movie yet. Julian Edelman recently had Zabransky
and Adrian Peterson
on his podcast, and they both broke down from both sides of the game. Absolutely incredible game. The Boise State Broncos were nobodies.
They had that blue field.
Yeah, 90% of America only knew them for their field.
And I loved playing as them on those NCAA games.
Oh, yeah.
For the blue
so
field.
Much fun.
It was great. But
and we're talking about a 1-point finish here. I was 16 years old. This was 6 days before my 17th birthday. January 6th, 1990 is the birthday, if anybody out there trying to give me a birthday present.
What year was this again?
This actually happened in 2007 because it was in January, but it was a 2006 season. So you got Boise State at the helm is Zabransky. And
this is a Bob Stoops coached Oklahoma team, like the legendary Bob Stoops.
And Paul Thompson was the quarterback. He did not have a good game. 19 for 32, 233 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks.
Well, that's because Rhett Bomar, I remember this, Rhett Bomar, the original starter for Oklahoma, was suspended for the year.
Yeah.
For some violations of he had a job that was supposed to be a legitimate job that he no showed, like he was a member of the mafia or something like that, and he gets suspended for it. So Rhett Bomar was actually the starting quarterback for Oklahoma, and not good at that time.
Yeah, it doesn't look so good. I'm just gonna run through some of these Boise State players' names, some of the skill players that made the stats. Not a lot of people are going to know any of these names. Jared Zabransky, Vinny Peretta, Ian Johnson, Kyle Ginge.
Ian Johnson will always be famous for not just the scoring the final play, but because he got down on a knee and got married.
Engaged to his cheerleader girlfriend.
I wonder if they're still married.
That would be one that I could probably look up. But I'm going to drive home the point that you don't know any of the Boise State players because they had no NFL talent on that team, but they did win this game 43-42. When Oklahoma had Adrian Peterson, I guess that's all they had going for them. I don't see a whole lot of other names that I know that I remember. So I'm going to bounce back to why I dropped this one down to number 5. As epic as it was, the production and entertainment and sports entertainment at the time was not what it is today. There weren't as many camera angles. There wasn't a camera on cables going around the field, getting all these different angles. They didn't have 30 on-site producers editing all these shots together, telling them where to get the best shot from to get it on air in time. So the trick plays that Boise State wins this game with, the last couple of plays they call, are not conventional at all, and they fool the cameraman multiple times. So
especially on that last run. Oh my gosh!
So there's a play where Vinny Peretta, not the quarterback, throws a 6-yard touchdown to Derek Schumann, and then Oklahoma takes a timeout because they don't know what to do, and then Ian Johnson runs in for a 2-point conversion to win the game.
Yeah, but what is the name of that said play?
Statue of Liberty?
The Statue of Liberty. So what the Statue of Liberty is Zabransky drops back and fakes it like he's going to pass it and hands the ball behind his back as he fakes it, and Ian Johnson comes running behind, grabs the ball from behind his back, and scores. And before that, they had one of my favorite sandwiches from Firehouse Subs, the hook and ladder play.
Yep.
Which the hook and ladder is you throw the ball, the receiver catches it, and then he laterals it back to another receiver as he's getting hit, and that receiver takes off and scores a touchdown.
So just an incredibly exciting game. And it even started off with fireworks. So Boise State was undefeated, remained undefeated throughout the season. Oklahoma was ranked 7th at the time. The 11-win team, they weren't a bunch of scrubs. But Boise State jumps out quick on them, 14-7 in the first quarter, and they go into the half with a 21-10 lead. Oklahoma really laid it on in the fourth quarter. That's where they made their comeback. Adrian Peterson came out of nowhere.
If I remember correctly, Adrian Peterson was playing hurt in this game.
He was. And Oklahoma has an interception with a minute to go in the fourth quarter and return it for a touchdown, and that's how they break the tie that was 28-28. So Oklahoma field goal is 28-20. Oklahoma scores a touchdown and then gets a 2-point conversion with a minute 26 to go in the game. It looks like Oklahoma's about to come back and shut the Cinderella story down.
Yeah.
And then Boise State's like, well, we got to keep throwing. We can't run the football. They're stepping us up front. So with 1:02 to go, Oklahoma picks it off and returns it for a touchdown, kicks an extra point. Now they're up by 7. So Boise State's got to do something. And with 7 seconds left to go in the game, 7 seconds, they got the possession with 47 seconds left to go, and they went 5 plays, 78 yards in 40 seconds and scored a touchdown, got an extra point, tie it 35-35. Wow. They go into overtime. Adrian Peterson scores. They kick an extra point. Boise State gets the ball. I'm sorry, earlier I think I said double overtime. Then it was 1 overtime. So Oklahoma scores. They get the extra points, 42-35. Boise State, hook and ladder, then the 2-point conversion, Statue of Liberty to win 43-42 in absolute iconic fashion. I think that is a top 5 championship game all day long.
That is an all-timer. That game is an all-timer, and you always remember where you were when you first saw that game or when you first saw the highlights of the game.
Yes.
Because I remember, I was 22 when that game happened. So I was, living in Florida at the time, and that game was – I remember people talking about that game, like, who runs a hook and ladder? Well, they did, and they won with it. So, yeah, I love this game. I love watching, especially like the fourth quarter of this game is incredible.
Number 4 on our list.
Number 4 is another unexpected one, but you got to remember these lists are games that I enjoy, and so the last ever BCS national championship, the 2014 BCS national championship game played in the Rose Bowl
on my birthday
in Pasadena, California. Yep, you were what?
That was my 24th birthday.
24. So you have the 12-1 Auburn Tigers of the SEC going up against the 13-0 ACC champ Florida State Seminoles. Jimbo Fisher's the head coach, and Gus Malzahn is the head coach of the Auburn Tigers.
Mm-hmm. pretty special quarterback in the backfield for Florida State.
Have you noticed a trend with a lot of these games? Like I'm picking games where a lot of well-known players have played in them, or star quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Jameis Winston is the quarterback, and he was the offensive MVP of this game as well. Crazy game, another like close game. I like those close scoring games. I love shutouts when it's my team shutting it or destroying another team. But from a watching standpoint, this game is a fun game to watch. It starts in the first quarter. I mean, right away. 9 minutes 53 seconds into the game, Robert Agoyo hits a field goal, 35-yard field goal, 3-0. And then with 3:07 left in the first, Trey Mason, 12-yard touchdown reception from Nick Marshall and a Cody Parkey kick makes it 7-3 Auburn Tigers.
42 yards.
42. Oh, I had 12-yard touchdown reception, but oh well. In the second quarter, Melvin Ray catches a 50-yard touchdown reception from Marshall with a Parkey kick, makes it 14-3.
His only catch of the game. And
then Nick Marshall scores from 4 yards out in the 5 minutes and 1 second left in the second quarter. Another Cody Parkey kick. It's 21-3. And then in the second quarter with 1:28 seconds left, Atlanta Falcon legend Devontae Freeman, 3-yard touchdown run, and a Goyo kick makes it 21-10 Auburn. And then a 41-yard field goal by Agoyo in the third quarter with 6:05 left in the third quarter, 21-13. So they're edging back. They're making it close. In the fourth quarter, 10:55, Chad Abram, 11-yard touchdown catch from Jameis Winston, makes it 21-20 because the kick was no good.
His only catch of the game as well.
Yep. In the fourth quarter with 4:42 left, a 22-yard field goal by Cody Parkey makes it 24-20. And then right after that, the kickoff. The very next kickoff, a 100-yard kickoff return by Kermit Whitfield, and a Goyo kick makes it 27-24 FSU. This is all in the fourth quarter. 1:19 left in the fourth quarter. Mason, a 37-yard touchdown run by Cody Parkey kick makes it 31-27. 13 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Kelvin Benjamin, a 2-yard reception from Jameis Winston. Florida State goes on to win 34-31. This game was an incredible game. That fourth quarter alone is ridiculous. Going into the fourth quarter, it was 21-13. After the fourth quarter, when it ended, it was 34-31. So, and they were down 24-14.
Mm-hmm.
Or they were down 21-13. They come back. Because at one point they were down 21-3 FSU, and they come all the way back, and they win the game. And once again, this game, Jameis Winston was already on the map. He gets even more on the map, explodes in this game. This is, even though he's stealing lobsters from Publix, he's still at the top of the draft boards after this game. There are some notable players. Auburn had Greg Robinson and Trey Mason that went on to play in the NFL. The Florida State Seminoles had, of course, Jameis Winston, Timmy Jernigan, James Wilder Jr., Kelvin Benjamin, and Devontae Freeman that all went on to play in the NFL.
Don't forget James Wilder Jr.
Yep. So that was a fun in the last ever BCS National Championship game right before the playoffs started.
And that was an undefeated Florida State Seminoles team.
Very, very good Florida State Seminoles team, too, by the way.
Trey Mason, he had a few big returns in college.
Mm-hmm.
He also returned kicks, not just a running back.
Nope. All right, what are we in the top three now?
Yeah, we're in top three.
Three.
Number 3 is going to be a game that I was blessed to attend in person. That's going to be the 2017-18 Rose Bowl, UGA versus Oklahoma. I can tell you right now that was the greatest football game I've ever seen in person. And I've seen some great ones. I've been to a lot of ball games. I've played in a lot of ball games. I've watched a lot of more. And another Jake Fromm game. This was Jake Fromm played lights out. You could not have asked for a better performance. Jake Fromm was 20 for 29 with 210 yards and 2 touchdowns, man. I mean, versus a Baker Mayfield who was 23 of 35, 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick.
Baker, touchdown maker.
And, you know, I bleed the red and black, go Dogs. I know that to get to heaven and to walk the streets of gold, you got to know the password is go Dogs go. However, I do believe that this was Baker Mayfield's game to lose. Oklahoma lost this game. Georgia didn't win it, even though Sony Michel walks it off in double overtime. Oklahoma lost this game.
Well, Baker Mayfield was the one that had the aura, the glow all around him. He was the star of this game coming in. Like, everything was focused on Baker Mayfield in this game.
Yep. And I'd like to look at one particular stat. So I was blessed. I'll tell a little story. I was in Southern California. I was in San Bernardino. We were building the New Year's Eve party for Insomniac in Electric Daisy Carnival at the NOS Center. The owner of the company I worked for is an Oklahoma alumni. Chris, if you're listening, shout out, sir. Thank you for all the opportunities. God broke the mold when he made you, man. Anyway.
Boomasuna.
Chris goes to the management group and says, hey, guys, I just want you to know that we are not working on the 1st. And they're like, well, all right, Chris, that's cool. He's like, I mean, not a single one of my guys is going to be here. Not me, not my on-site steward. Stone's not going to be here. End of discussion. And he ended the meeting right there, and he came to me. He said, hey, Stoney, you want to go to the Georgia-Oklahoma game? I said, boss, I got a confession. He said, what's up? I said, I was already going to call in sick. I already bought a ticket. He laughed pretty heartily. So he bought me a parking pass. And when I tell you, man, you don't know the Rose Bowl's there until you're in the parking lot. You're driving through Hollywood-esque suburbia, and all of a sudden, bam, there's a $1 billion golf course and a coliseum. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
I've been to the Rose Bowl. I saw Notre Dame play UCLA in the Rose Bowl, and that's UCLA's home stadium.
Yep.
But, yeah, you're exactly right. It's like subdivision, boom. And in the middle of, like, this field out in Pasadena is the Rose Bowl, and it's beautiful. The history there, the early Super Bowls was played in the Rose Bowl.
So you're talking about a stadium that'll hold almost 100,000 people.
Yeah, huge.
Attendance that day was 92,844, and everybody was wearing red, just a different shade. So I get in the stadium, you know, I go through the traditions. I get my hot dog. I get my commemorative cup. I got all my Georgia gear decked out head to toe. I'm Georgia shoes, socks, draws. The only thing not Georgia I think I had on that day were my blue jeans. So I'm walking through 92,000 people and somehow still run into my boss. And we just give each other the respectful nod, the hey, how you doing, good luck. And we keep walking. I sit down in the corner of the end zone, and to my nobody's on my right. I got an aisle seat. And to my left is a young lady and her grandmother, her great-grandmother. Her great-grandmother was a Georgia alumni, I believe class of 71.
Wow.
61.
Wow.
I don't remember, and I don't want to lie to you, but it was before I was born, I'll tell you that. And she said she's never missed a game, whether she listened to it on the radio, she was there in person, or saw it on TV. She's never missed a single game, no matter babies being born, grandchildren being born, and she sure wasn't going to miss the opportunity of her dogs playing in the Rose Bowl, because it would be the first time in her lifetime she had the opportunity to go. Now, her great-granddaughter is an Oklahoma student at the time. She's going to Oklahoma. So by the end of warm-ups, me and this lady have talked over her granddaughter so much that they just switched seats. And I got to set the scene. So it's beautiful outside. It's about 90 degrees in January. In the middle of the day, it's hot, and there's no shade in the stadium, of course. We're watching Oklahoma warm up, and I just see CeeDee Lamb throwing a corner touchdown pass to Baker Mayfield over and over and over again. And I will add that they did that in the game. CeeDee Lamb was 1 for 1 with a 2-yard touchdown pass. And this lady looks at me and she says, you know, they're gonna either do that when we'll never expect it when they throw it out there, and it'll probably be for a 2-point conversion. And sure enough, we never saw it coming. We didn't make any adjustments when Baker made his way out into the flat, and he was wide open just like he was in warm-ups. But that lady and I enjoyed the first 3 quarters, jumping, hooting, and hollering, and for the last quarter and overtime, we were froze. we would scream when it was time to scream, but otherwise we were locked in on the game, and it started getting cold. I'd never experienced being that hot during the day and getting that cold at night.
That's Southern California for you, man.
It is incredible. And she's a grandmother, seasoned vet, so she breaks out the blanket, and she and I share the Georgia blanket because her granddaughter refuses to cover up with it. And I didn't get up again until Sony Michel breaks the goal plane when he takes off in the wild dog down the left side. And when I tell you this game, the highs, the lows, it was everything you wanted in a football game. Broken tackles, big hits, quarterback sacks. There were not a lot of interceptions in this game. There was only one. Baker threw an interception, and it didn't really translate into a big deal. But Sony Michel, 3 rushing touchdowns. Nick Chubb, 2 rushing touchdowns. Rodney Anderson for Oklahoma, 2 rushing touchdowns. There's 7 rushing touchdowns in this game, and it's a 54-48 final.
I'm telling you.
When's the last time you heard of 100 points getting scored and 7 of them being rushing touchdowns?
You know what I think diminishes this game, though, is the fact that the next week or the next couple of weeks later, Georgia goes on and, we talked about the game, the Tua Hurts switch. Yep. It was probably at the time the greatest semifinal game that was played in NCAA history, only a couple years into that, but it was showing that was a great move by college football to add this playoff system in, because you had games like this. You would have the Ohio State-Georgia game a few years later, which was the national championship game.
Absolutely.
And, another game you were
Rest in peace, TCU.
This game, I will always remember, and people can argue all you want, Sony Michel had the biggest run in Georgia football history.
Yep.
And this game is
up to this point.
This game is the one that solidified Kirby Smart and the brand new Georgia Bulldogs. And this is the new dynasty that is taking over college football right now. It's the Bulldogs. And this was the game. This really is the game that started it. This 54-48 masterpiece of a game that we that you got to witness live and in person.
And Oklahoma had one of the most prolific offenses in their school's history this year.
Everybody wanted an Oklahoma-Alabama championship. I remember people talking that we want that national championship. We want that 54-48 national champion, or we want that national championship. But no, Georgia had other plans.
Yep. And it's a real kick in the danglers to see the talent that Oklahoma still had on the bench. And we could have gotten it happen. It could have happened to us the week before. Kyler Murray is Baker Mayfield's backup. So it's not like we would have been prepared in any – they could have beat us if
but who was Jake Fromm's backup? Wasn't it Justin Fields?
No, that's too old. I think that's was it Justin Fields before he went to Ohio State?
Maybe.
I would have to look up that roster, that 2018 roster. I do know that on that Georgia team was starting quarterback Jake Fromm, running backs Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, and DeAndre Swift. Wide receiving core made up of Javon Wims, Terry Godwin.
Justin Fields played in Georgia in 2018. He didn't go to Ohio State till 2019 and 20.
So, Jake Fromm's backup was Justin Fields. That is poetic. So, in the receiving core, you had Wims, Godwin, Warner, Charlie Warner, Mecole Hardman.
Yes.
Super Bowl champion, and Tyler Simmons. Sony Michel did cost us a fumble early in the game. I remember that. Dominic Sanders was the corner that picked off Baker Mayfield.
Sony Michel will always have a place in my heart because just a year or two after this, he plays in a Super Bowl for New England against St. Louis, and he took over that game. And in the game against Kansas City in the AFC Championship, he took over that game, ran the ball down their throats. He was finding holes, but because of all the knee injuries that he had, his career was shortened. But he was nowhere near as explosive as he was in college. But I will always remember the way that he could just take over a game. And he did it in the AFC Championship, and he did it in the Super Bowl.
The last bit of info on this one is some notable Oklahoma Sooners in that game. Baker Mayfield, CeeDee Lamb, Rodney Anderson,
Wow.
Trey Sermon,
Mm.
Kyler Murray, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown,
Wow.
Dimitri Flowers. I mean, all these guys are in the NFL.
Yeah.
Playing right now.
Stacked team.
And Georgia's kicker was the Rocket Rodrigo Blankenship, the legend, the GOAT. He had 12 points in this game.
Currently of the Colts.
Uh-huh.
Well, so
This is just one more thing. This is how even this game was. Both kickers for Georgia and Oklahoma, 12 points.
Yeah.
Both teams, 7 touchdowns. Hold on. Jake Fromm, 2 touchdowns. Baker Mayfield, 2 touchdowns. Rushing, Georgia had 5. Oklahoma, 2. So there were 7 rushing touchdowns, 7 passing touchdowns.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What? There's no way. 5. Oh, that's what I did. I added the teams and the totals together.
Huh.
So Baker had 2 passing touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb had a passing touchdown. Rodney Anderson had 2 rushing touchdowns. And then you had
Up until 2 years ago, this was the greatest semifinal game, and then Georgia-Ohio State came along.
easily.
So that was number 3 on our list. Let's go to the top 2. And I have number 2. Once again, we are at the Rose Bowl. Okay, it's a little later, and it's January 4th, 2006, so 2 days before your birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Rose Bowl, Pasadena, California. This is considered by many who are not Georgia Bulldog fans to be the greatest national championship game of all time.
If I wasn't a Georgia Bulldog fan, it would be.
Yeah, and that's why it's number 2. It's the Texas Longhorns against the USC Trojans, and this is the death of a dynasty. It is Mac Brown against Pete Carroll. 41-38 Texas. The offensive MVP is Vince Young, and his stats are ridiculous. The defensive MVP is safety Michael Huff. Let's get into this game because this game is ridiculous. Lindale White scores first for UFC on a 4-yard run. David Pino had a 46-yard field goal. It's 7-3. Selvin Young scores from 12 yards out. The Pino kick failed. It's 9-7 UT. Romance Taylor, I almost said Romance Taylor, 30-yard run. It's 16-7 UT at this point. And then Mario Danello had a 43-yard field goal, making it 16-10 Texas. That's at halftime. That was the halftime score. Going into the third quarter, big old Lindale White rumbling, fumbling, stumbling for a 2-yard run, making it 17-16 USC. Vince Young scores from 14 yards out on a 14-yard run, 23-17 UT. Lindale White, man, this is a Lindale White game. 12-yard run, making it 24-23 USC. And then Reggie Bush, the Reggie Bush, 26-yard run, 31-23 USC. David Pino with a 34-yard field goal, making it 31-26. Then Dwayne Jarrett, 22-yard pass from Matt Leinart, making it 38-26.
Dwayne Jarrett was the cheat code in NCAA football.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
It was not fair.
Him and Reggie Bush.
Yes.
And then Vince Young takes over. 4 minutes and 3 seconds left in the fourth quarter. He runs for 17 yards, making it 38-33. And then the most famous 2-minute drill ever in college football, Vince Young going down the field on scoring on an 8-yard run, and then scoring the 2-point conversion, making it 41-38. That was a 10-play, 56-yard drive. Only took a minute and 50 seconds. Listen to this. Both teams had 30 first downs. Total yards for Texas, 556. Total yards for USC, 574. 289 rushing yards for Texas, 209 for USC. Vince Young stats. 30 of 40 passing, 267 yards, 19 carries, 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then their leading receiver was tight end David Thomas, had 10 catches for 88 yards. Matt Leinart was 29 of 40 for 365 yards, a touchdown at INT. Lindale White had 20 carries for 124 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then Dwayne Jarrett had 10 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. Now, there are some players in this game, 2 legendary coaches in Pete Carroll and Mac Brown. All right, so here's the guys that went into the 2006 draft. Oh, and also, this is the first time ever in a national championship game where 2 Heisman Trophy winners were on the same team in the same starting lineup, Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush. That's how great this USC team was.
Oh, yeah.
The 2006 draft had the 2nd overall pick in Reggie Bush, the 3rd overall pick in Vince Young. Michael Huff was the 7th overall pick. Matt Leinart was the 10th overall pick. Tatasui Latue, Fred Matua, Lindale White, David Kurtman, Winston Justice, Cedric Griffin, David Thomas, Frosty Rucker, Dominique Bird, Darnell Bing, Jonathan Scott, Lawan Ramsey, and Roderick Wright were all drafted in the next 6 rounds.
Wow.
This was legendary announcer Keith Jackson's last game. It was also the last college football game aired on ABC under the ABC Sports name before it was purchased by ESPN. The victory was Texas's 800th of all time, and it was their 4th national championship.
And you can't tell me that Vince Young didn't want it. He had a QBR of 95.8, and he accounted for 467 yards by himself.
Yes.
0 turnovers.
He took over this game. He said, "Hold my beer," and he took off, and this is the Vince Young game.
Oh,
but you look on the other side of that. Look at the players on both these teams. I mean, it's ridiculous. And not only that, the reason why this is the greatest game, and it didn't go to overtime.
No.
It went right to the end.
The very last play.
Vince Young is breaking tackles. This is a guy built like a linebacker playing quarterback, and he can run.
Mm-hmm.
He is putting men down on their buttocks and breaking tackles left and right to get to that end zone. This was an incredible game. I remember watching this when I was living in Orlando, living in Florida, watching this game, thinking, I just witnessed one of the greatest games of all time. I just saw this on TV. I just watched this game. I would have loved to have been there.
Oh, right.
The atmosphere, USC is pretty much playing a home game.
Yep.
They're a Los Angeles school, and they're playing in Pasadena, which is right outside of Los Angeles. They're playing in UCLA's home stadium, but this is a home game for them. They're a hometown team, but the orange that showed up for that game, all the orange that showed up, and I don't like Texas at all, and I wasn't a big USC fan, but this was the end of that Pete Carroll USC dynasty. This was it. This was their last stand. It was the old gunslinger going out and
all right.
And getting defeated. And Matthew McConaughey has something to cheer about.
That's right.
Hook 'em.
Hook 'em horns, baby. You just come on down to Austin, hang out with us now.
You know, the thing about college football players is I keep getting older, but they stay the same age.
Mercy sakes. All right, we'll just take it on up the road a little bit. And this, anybody that knows me knows that what's coming next is only because the Dogs and the greatest college football championship of all time is going to be the one.
I have a question for you. Who's that coming down the track?
Who's that coming down the track? The Mean Machine in red and black.
Who?
There we go. So, on the fateful day of January the 10th, 2022, culminating the 2021 season, the University of Georgia Bulldogs entered the national championship ranked number 1 against the number 2 Alabama Crimson Tide.
Going up against their arch rival. This is Batman versus Joker.
After the first quarter ended, Alabama Crimson Tide led 3-0 in a defensive struggle throughout the first half. In the second quarter, both teams were able to put up 6 points. taking us into halftime with a 9-6 score with Alabama leading. Out of the half, Georgia scores a full-blown touchdown with an extra point to follow, and that really opened things up at a whopping 13-9. So this is, up to this point, it's just a nail-biter for both sides. I feel like both fan bases are just about to lose their mind when finally Bryce Young and the Crimson Tide drive all the way down the field, and on 3rd and goal, Bryce dumps one off to the tight end over the middle to score. It's like a 4-play. Oh, yeah, we fumbled the ball. Stetson Bennett gets sacked by Christian Harris, lost 11 yards, and Harris also recovers. Bryant recovers the fumble, Brian Branch, and then Alabama comes down. Bryce Young, 3-yard pass over the middle like a dump to the tight end, Cameron Latou, and then it's like, hey, they're about to do it to us again. It's 18-13, buddy. What are we going to do? Well, Stetson Bennett figures it out, and in one of my most favorite calls of all time, Chris Fowler says, Bennett launches, Mitchell caught it, touchdown Dogs. And let me tell you, I couldn't have scripted it any different.
The goosebumps to this day.
Yeah.
Whew.
It just unbelievable. I mean, the play before, it's first down, and we're on the 32-yard line, and Bennett gets sacked by Dallas Turner. And it's the next play, they jump off sides, and Stetson sees the flag. So he takes like a shuffle step straight back.
Free play.
He knew it. You know, the veteran showing there. He drops back a little further, rolls out to the right, sets and throws. And in his throwing motion, he knows he's about to get hammered.
Oh, yeah.
But he had to throw it as hard as he could. It was one-on-one coverage, and Adonai Mitchell won. He wrestled the ball out of the defender's hands. Like they caught it together.
Yep.
We go on to miss the 2-point conversion. We were trying to get it 21-18, make it a 3-point game, but we couldn't. So 19-18 here. Alabama goes 3 and out.
Wow.
Negative 2 yards here. 59-second drive. Less than a minute, we get the ball back. And there's 3.5 minutes left to go in the game. And I'm pretty sure I know what a heart attack feels like because I was having one at this point. James
we
Cook.
all were.
James Cook, 4 yards, 7 yards. Like Zamir White, 5 yards, 7 yards. Stetson Bennett, incomplete pass to George Pickens. But penalty, pass interference on Alabama on Kool-Aid, 15-yard penalty. Now it's first down again from the Alabama 24. So what is Zamir White, 7-yard run. Timeout, Georgia. Stop the clock with 4 minutes to go. Let's talk about it. Let's think about it. What are we going to do? Give the ball to Brock Bowers? Duh.
Yeah.
Like, that's the play that nobody – it doesn't make sense, the physics of that play. Bennett turns, throws it to Bowers. Bowers looks like he's bending over like he's old.
Yeah.
Barely catches it, looks up, pauses, and then just runs in a straight line. And nobody has a proper tackle angle on him because he's deceitfully fast.
Yeah. And Brock Bowers looked like me getting out of bed in the morning when he caught the ball. You know, it's like
he didn't even look like he was in a hurry.
No.
And then the greatest Georgia play from to date,
the pick six.
The pick six. Bryce Young drops back, and he throws as hard as he can, I guess.
Yeah.
Which was not hard enough, and Keely Ringo intercepts it.
He's throwing up a prayer.
Yeah, he threw up a prayer with less than a minute to go. They could have taken a sack right there. It was 3rd and 10.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
you had
Bryce
one
Young,
more down.
Bryce Young was trying to do Vince Young things.
Yes,
and
he
was trying to win the game and take it into his own hands.
He thought he was the next Tua Tagovailoa, but he was not. And on 3rd and 10, excuse you, 3rd and 10 from the UGA 44 with 54 seconds to go, Bryce Young throws it down the sideline. Keely Ringo of the Georgia Bulldogs comes down with it and returns it for a 79-yard iconic interception touchdown return. And the Jack Podlesny kick makes it 33-18. wrapping up the greatest championship football game of my time. So in my era of watching sports, this is the happiest I've ever been. I got to go to Game 5 of the 2021 World Series. We lost, but I got to see Adam Duvall hit a grand slam in the bottom of the first inning. I got to see some really cool stuff that game. If you'd have told me that morning when I woke up we were going to lose, I'd have still gone to the game and froze my tail off. But this, I was not there. I was in my living room, and I think this is the most joy I had felt in my life up until the day I got married.
This was the year to be a fan from the state of Georgia, because not only did the Bulldogs win the national championship in January, the following October, the Braves win the World Series, and I think So the Braves won the World Series in October. The Bulldogs won the national championship in January, and then the following January, the Bulldogs won another national championship.
We were working together at this point already. We had just started talking about making a podcast when this happened.
So for people that don't know, this is 3 years in the making, this podcast, almost 4.
Yep.
But this game, and the score doesn't reflect how close this game was. 33-18. It was a closer game than the score reflects, because the game really wasn't over until that pick six.
These are total points scored by both teams per quarter. First quarter, 3 points. Both teams, total, 3. Second quarter, total points scored, 12. So at this point, there's only been 15 points scored in the game. It's a total defensive struggle. Third quarter, 7 points. That's it. Fourth quarter is where it finally changed, and this is where the Dogs brought the first national championship home in over 40 years, is they scored 20 to Alabama's 9. So you got to look.
Something else about this game.
They scored more in the fourth quarter than they did the first 3 combined.
This is Nick Saban's last national championship game, and he loses it. Because the next year, Georgia beats TCU, and then this past year was Michigan and Washington, right?
Yeah, it sure was.
So this was Nick Saban's last national championship game, and
Wow.
Georgia hands it to him. I mean,
That's poetic.
They kicked Alabama, finally kicked him in the danglers.
I mean, I
Save the danglers.
I guess since we're counting conference championships, he plays in one more. He wins one more SEC championship against us.
Yeah, but the national
But
championship.
the Natty.
The one that matters the most.
Yep.
I mean, you kicked him right in the danglers.
And our only loss that season was to them in the SEC championship.
But it doesn't matter. They can have it.
They can have that
And
chip
it doesn't matter.
because we took the big one home.
This was the game that Stetson Bennett became a big-time college quarterback.
Oh, absolutely.
And then the next year they go and they repeat and they blow out TCU, but they have that Ohio State-Georgia game I was going to put on this list. I struggle with it, but I went more for games that were memorable for me.
Same.
And that game was memorable, and I'm sure if we were to do this list in another year or two, it might even make the list. But there are so many games where so many different things happen, and that game was a great game. Fantastic game. Probably the best semifinal game in college football.
And I couldn't even watch. I was there.
It was so nerve-wracking. It was so nerve-wracking. And
Shout out to Adam Arrowwood for being a great friend and taking me to some really cool sporting events.
Yeah. You know, and that kick was missed right as it was turning into the new year. It was becoming, 2022?
New year, new dog.
Yep. And so we'd be hard-pressed not to mention that. I want to say that I think the occurring theme here is ever since I've been around, so if you go back in 1985, the year I was born, there's really been 4 dynasties, if you think about it. Miami, USC, Alabama, and now we're looking at the Georgia dynasty. You
Yep.
win more than one national championship in 5 years, you're a dynasty.
Yeah.
And you're constantly in the playoff. You're constantly in the SEC championship game. You're a dynasty. But all those teams, everything comes to an end. Every dynasty comes to an end. We saw it in the NFL with New England. All dynasties come to an end.
We saw it with the Dolphins, the Cowboys. Yeah, we see it. You know,
the
they rise and fall.
The Steelers in the 70s, they had a dynasty. It ends. It ends, but
There's a formula, and it'll last about a decade until one of these great minds come out of nowhere with a defensive coordinator that's like, oh, I'm going to put a stop to this.
or an offense that you can't figure it out.
Yep. Or your defensive coordinator can't figure it out.
And that's what happened with USC. They had an offense so dynamic you couldn't figure it out. And then when someone finally did, it's like, hey, we're going to beat you with RPO. And they did. So,
would you believe that this was almost a 2-hour episode?
Yeah, I believe it, probably because my phone's blowing up. I don't know. But yeah, to put a bow on this, just say, hey, thank you guys for hanging in with us. We probably did our most epic episode as of right now.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We appreciate you guys. This has been episode 6. Have a great night. And remember, it's not always about winning and losing. It's all about how you podcast it.